Hey everyone, we have 5 minutes until we get started. So while we're waiting, if you want to go into the chat and introduce yourself, who you are, what type of brand you're starting, and anything else that you want to share, you can go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to mute myself until it's time to start.
Hello? I was going to be more than one person.
Hey everyone, while we wait, you can introduce yourself in the chat. If you go to the three dots that say more, you'll see a chat option. So you can message the whole group. Okay, we have Yvette from Florida, who's starting a plastic-free clothing brand. We have Ayushi starting a luxury streetwear e-commerce brand in India. Does anyone else want to share before we get started? Janet from Texas starting a women's Western style brand. Men's young yoga wear brand in Goa. Sally from the UK starting a women's resort wear brand. Dagmar, I would like to do a cashmere collection made in Italy. All right, cool. If everyone else wants to continue sharing, you can, but I'm going to get started with all of the questions because we have quite a few to get through and not a lot of time. So if you don't already know me, I'm Melanie DeSalvo. I'm the founder of Virtue and Vice. I've worked in the fashion industry for nearly 15 years now. A lot of my early career was in fast fashion, and now I do mostly, well, exclusively really sustainable, ethical, conscious fashion. So I'm actually in India right now. I spent half the year in India and half the year in the United States. I'm partners with a factory in Jaipur. And I guess that kind of sums it all up. I know a lot of you are familiar with me through the blog, my emails, and social media. So I'm just going to get into all of the questions. If you are wanting to win the 50% off of Launch My Conscious Line, you must be here at the end of this to enter. If not, you won't be able to enter. So make sure that you stick around until the end if that's something that you're interested in. Okay, so we do this in Launch My Conscious Line every week. There is an office hour session. It's obviously a lot less people, and also it is a little bit more interactive because I know everyone and I know their brand very well. And a lot of the advice, like 90% of starting a brand is all the same thing, following in order, but 10% is what's unique to your brand. And that 10% is what's going to either allow you to succeed or you're going to fail. If you try to follow someone else's path with that 10%, and it's not right for your brand, it's not going to work for you. So that's why I asked so many questions for you to respond to before asking your question, because I wanted to have some sort of background information about what it is that you're doing. Someone who has a budget of $4,000, I'm going to be offering very different advice to than someone who has a budget of $100,000. Someone who's starting a kids brand is going to have a very different strategy than someone starting a streetwear brand. So the more I know about you and your brand, the more I can answer. If you are here and any of your questions involved, can you give me a supplier? Can you give me a manufacturer? I will not be answering those questions tonight. Also, how do I sell my stuff? How do I market my line? That is a very broad question. And some of the questions like that, it's like 10 weeks in the Launch My Conscious Line program. It isn't just do X, Y, and Z. Here's a TikTok video. Now you'll succeed. If you're doing like I do Instagram videos and I do TikTok videos, and I'm still on the fence if I'm going to continue doing that, because for me the danger is people see these very small snippets of it's good advice, but you see such a small snippet and you think, okay, this is what I need to do to be successful. You need to do that plus like 20 other things stacked on top of that. So asking me how do I market, like again, that's like a 10-week answer of trial, error, collecting data, analyzing your data, looking at what's going on, like all of that. So I can't answer a question like that in this. For everyone else who gave me very specific questions, I'm going to go through all of them the best I can. Again, I don't know your brands that intimately, but I'm going to be offering general good advice that should work about 95% of the time. There'll always be an instance where there is an exception. But I think the questions that we're going over, they are pretty general. Okay. Before I even get started, if I mispronounce names, I'm really sorry. I am terrible just with grammar and reading in general. But so please don't take offense. I'm going to do my best and let's get started. Okay. So first we have April from Hawaii. I'm helping a hotel and a few restaurants with their uniforms. I want to transition them from polyester clothing they get from one industry uniform shop to Tencel or Modal in a custom logo brand print. I'm a Lensing fan. I'm concentrating on the restaurant uniforms first and have only 2 styles that should work for all 4 restaurants for this one hotel. Okay, I love that. This is really good, just so everybody knows, if you can reuse your patterns in different ways. Loading whiteboard experience. I'm not sure what this is. Can everyone still see me?
Yeah.
I don't know who Faith is. Can you stop whatever it is you're doing? Okay. Um, okay.
I could see you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Let's not share or do anything. Okay, I think we should be good. Okay. So, back to what I was saying. So if you can reuse your patterns, that is a really good strategy, especially if you have a small budget. So a lot of times, if you want to make a long sleeve button down, you can then turn it into a short sleeve button down, basically reusing it. Or if you have one button down style, you can make it in 10 different fabrics. A big majority, especially when you're working with low MOQs, a big majority of your budget is going to go into your development, your pattern making, your fit samples, your salesman samples, all these different types of things. So if you think about it this way, if someone's making 1,000 pieces and like their development fees are $100, that's $100 split over 1,000 pieces, right? It's not going to cost a lot. But if your MOQ is only 10 pieces and it costs you $100 to develop, that's $10 you have to add on to your base price just to break even. So you want to try to make as few patterns or patterns with alterations to save money on that as possible. So I really like the idea that you're only doing 2 styles. I think that's very smart. And then reusing them for different hotels where you can have different logos, branding, colors, all that different type of stuff that's going to help you save money in your development fees. So they'll have their own print and both a dress and a shirt. The other hotel will be a different style and their own print, but the same 2 possible fabrics. So again, I would maybe have the same style and not necessarily just change the fabrics. And I'm going to talk about that in 1 second with your question. Your MOQ is 50 for the dresses and 100 for the shirts. You're thinking about doubling it to get a better unit price. You're not going to get a better unit price. If you go from 50 to 100 to 200 pieces, your price is going to be just about the same. You're really not going to start seeing a break in your pricing until you get to like 500. I would say like 10 to 20 pieces is one. Then you get to like 100 and you're not going to see a huge difference from 10 to 20 pieces to 100. But when you get to 500 pieces, you're going to start to see a huge decrease in your pricing. So a lot of times people are like, oh, my MOQ is 25. I don't like this price. If I go up to 40, will that change the pricing? No, it won't. Not at all. Unfortunately, and that's just like the reality and the truth of it. So you could double it if you want, but really you're not going to see significantly better pricing by doing that with those numbers. What's your total budget? You have 4,000 in cash, but you want to have them pre-order it and front the money. So we want to be really careful with the vocabulary that we use when we talk to people. We want to sound professional. That's a big part of the reason why a lot of times people don't get responses from factories. They don't send a professional email. And a lot of times factories are like, okay, I don't want to deal with this. The other thing is, as you start a brand, it's not just factories that are responding. It's when you're reaching out to editors for press, influencers for collaborations, stores to stock your product if that's the route that you want to go. You need to be using the proper vocabulary so you sound like you're in this industry and you know what you're doing. The other end of that is just not getting taken advantage of. When people see that you don't really know what you're talking about, they sometimes will take advantage of you. So you'll get higher prices or people will quote you different things. And you don't want that to happen to you. So front the money, that is not something that we would say. You would say you need to remit a deposit is the term that you would use. They need to remit a deposit. And the deposit would generally be 50%. No one's going to give you 100% to manufacture. So 50% would be something where I would start negotiating. Generally, wholesalers, they give 10%. And then you are responsible for funding, making that. And then when you give it to them, that's when you get the rest of the 90%. With this hotel, if you know the hotels, if you have a relationship, which it kind of sounds like that you might, since you've already kind of got this project going without kind of like 3 steps ahead. So I would say you could start maybe at 50% and try to negotiate that, but they're not probably going to give you 100% of the money. If they were, they would probably maybe be hiring like an internal team. Okay. You want to make this in Hawaii, but that could be a challenge if the hotel's budget doesn't allow. I know the fabric is milled overseas. That's another vocabulary thing. For some reason, a lot of people say milled. I'm not sure where that came from. There are 2 different types of fabric mills. There are knitting mills and they are weaving mills. So you would say the fabric is woven or the fabric is knit, and you want to be really specific with that. For me, that's like a red flag that someone doesn't work in the industry. We always say like, where's the fabric knit? Where's the fabric woven? Because you already know what type of fabric you're talking about and who that supplier is. Woven factories or mills don't make the same thing as the knit mills. They're 2 separate things. So you want to talk about them as 2 different things. Okay. So that's another vocabulary thing to keep in mind. Using the same fabric for all of it, does the pricing get better even if there's a custom print change? So no, again, your numbers are so low that you're really not going to see like economies of scale by what it is that you're trying to do. Bigger role than upcharge for the print charges. I need to sign up for membership lessons after. Yes, I think that would be great. And I think we could maybe create a better pitch to these hotels, because that's part of it, to get the most deposit possible. So I think, okay, so that was a good question, I think, for everyone, just in general. We're going to move on to the next one now. So you're not really going to get better pricing. If you're looking for better pricing, I would maybe consider going overseas, and we're going to get into more overseas questions, because sometimes, depending on your MOQ, if it's only like 20 pieces, it doesn't always make sense, but we will get there based on the other questions. I just want to. So Pooja, we're not asking questions right now. You have to pre-submit your questions, and those are the questions that I'm going to be going over, because there are a lot, and we would be here all day if we were just doing Q&A back and forth in that kind of format. Okay, the next person is Osvaldo, sustainable fashion brand, 100% certified cotton fabric. Total budget, starting with 0 budget. I've been working on patterns and prototypes. I don't have the tech packs yet. I don't want to make loans because everything is uncertain right now. I think I agree with that. Do not take out a loan to start your business. There are ways of starting your business with very little money, one of them being blanks, print on demand, bootstrapping, and so many other ways. Do not take out money. It is stressful. A lot of times you don't know what you're doing in the beginning, and your first season doesn't always make you money. So figure out what works. And once you figure out what works with your own money, then you can take out a loan to do more of what's working. Do not gamble your credit and your livelihood away on an idea. And, you know, people are going to do what they want to do, but I really don't recommend it at all. You want to make sure that your idea is good and that it works and that you have a direction to go in before you start putting yourself into debt. I don't have tech packs. Okay. So I'm going slow day by day at the moment. My plans are to make each design 20 in total in the final fabric, to present them as a collection to see people's reaction and what they like or don't like. Then to make a decision to produce the designs that people like more. So with these 20 pieces, I'm not sure if you even had a question. I just chose this because it is a good strategy if you know how to sew. And what you can do is you can actually take those 20 pieces to pop-ups, to trunk shows, to all different types of avenues, and try to sell them and see what happens when you do. You can make a website with those 20 pieces. No one needs to know your inventory. Take photos, put them up, and as they sell out, they sell out. You could even use that as part of your selling strategy. Buy it now, there's only one piece. When it's gone, it's gone. So it's not necessarily making the pieces, then going around and asking people what they think. Try to sell them. What people tell you that they want is not what they buy. It is not consistent. If you look at data about sustainable fashion, basically everyone is like, yeah, I want sustainable fashion. No one's going to say like, yes, give me fashion that pollutes the world. But when you look at what those people are buying, they are not buying sustainable fashion. They are basically buying whatever is cheapest, whatever is convenient, whatever they feel emotionally attached to based on the style. That's what they're buying. So while it's great you want to make these styles and have people look at them and give their feedback, you're really not going to have real data as to what people like and what's going to move your business forward until you try to sell it. And that's a strategy that we teach in the Launch My Conscious Line program, kind of how to pick the styles that you want to start with and use those very strategically to gather data on what people are buying and then scale and grow into those things that are working. That's the strategy. And that's what every single brand, and then I'm going to end this tangent, in the industry does. It is all about collecting data. I think a lot of people believe that fashion is dictated by these people who are very creative and whimsical, and fashion is dictated by data. They look at what sold last season, they look at what didn't sell last season, and then they make decisions strategically based on that. You as a new brand, you don't have data. So you need to create your own data. And, you know, making 5 long sleeve shirts in blue, green, red, white, that might not be the best use of getting data, because if your shirts don't sell, you're not going to know, did my customer want short sleeves? Did my customer want a different fabric? You want to create a varied, and even if you have a small budget, you can do this, but you want to create in different ways a varied collection that will allow you to capture that data your first season. This way you'll know what sells, you'll know what works, and then you can go deeper into whatever is working. So again, I know this wasn't a question, but try to sell those pieces. And then I would compare the data of what did people say they wanted and what did people actually buy. And I would bet my entire bank account that they're not going to align. Okay. Next question is from Kate. What type of MOQ? We have to be determined, a budget of 20,000. I know it's possible, but how do other people start clothing brands without any fashion experience? How do people usually source funding for their first brand? So that is the entire Launch My Conscious Mind program. It's 6 months of basically step-by-step instruction on how you can do this without having any fashion experience. And most people in the program, I have a lot of moms, I have a lot of people working full-time jobs. There's very few and far between people that were designers or that were like quit their job to just focus on this brand. It's designed specifically for that. So it's possible. I can't, again, this is like asking me like, can you give me a manufacturer, right? I can't answer this question, but I do want to touch upon your second question. That's why it's in my list. How do people usually source funding for their brand? You have to self-fund your first collection. Unless you have like some friends that want to give you money. But if you're talking about like actual funding from a VC firm or something like that, you need to have, again, data. You need to be able to say, I made 10 styles. I spent $5,000 on those 10 styles. I sold them, and my profit after ads and collaborations and websites and all these different business expenses was $5,000. That was my profit, right? You have to be able to tell them something. No one is going to give you money if you're just like, I have an idea. Okay, cool. But there are a million ideas, and anyone can do a million ideas. It's the execution of those ideas, and it's making money off of those ideas. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get a product, even just as like the person's question before you, even if it's just samples. And taking those samples and selling those samples and getting people's reaction, you need to have some sort of information about why someone should give you money. And why someone should give you money is because they believe you're going to be profitable. So you have to show them that you can move these products. If you make 10 pieces of something, if you make 3 pieces of something and you can't sell any of it, you should not be getting funding. You should be figuring out what it is that you need to tweak and change, whether it's your marketing, your delivery, the actual product itself, I don't know, to be getting those sales. So the first step is figuring out your budget. And the smallest budget I've ever worked with someone was $2,500 US. It's not going to be a 30-piece collection, but it is going to be something. It is going to get you data. It is going to get you sales, and you will be able to keep building forward. So that's what you have to do for funding. If not, then you kind of just have to ask around friends and family, see if people will give you loans. Maybe, maybe you have some people that will give you money, but in a more traditional sense of like VC raising, you have to have data. You have to have something to show them. Okay, Shambhavi, my question is, how do I start the whole process of going in this direction? How can people take me seriously if I'm not aware about the business so much? I would really focus on, there's a ton of templates that are for free on my website. Just sound professional. When all else fails, be as short as possible. Don't send paragraphs of I was sitting in my kitchen and this, like, no one cares. No one cares about that. People want to know the information. If I'm an editor, I want to know, why should I write about you? What makes you interesting? If I'm a factory, I want to know, what are you making and how much are you making? And like, how much do you want to pay me? And what's your timeline? Like, that's what I want to know. If I am a influencer, I want to know, like, what is this collaboration? And again, what are the terms, right? you care about your brand and you care about these things, and that's great. But the reality is that, like, I'm sure we all have like 9 to 5s, right? No one wants to read through a really long email. So the best advice I can give is just make it short. No email should ever be more than probably like 5 sentences. One sentence to introduce yourself, a couple sentences about what it is that you want out of this email, and then like a thank you, looking forward to hearing back. So that's, using the right vocabulary terms, right? Not like we mentioned before, front the money, like that is not a professional term. Knowing, knits, wovens, different terms like that. Again, you can find a lot of this online. In Launch My Conscious line, I go over everyone's emails. So not only do you get templates, but during office hours, which are every week, people submit whatever it is that they're working on, whether it's a press release or an email to a supplier, and I'll actually go over it and edit it for them, make sure all the terminology is correct. I worked in PR before I worked in fashion, so I can do that stuff too. But that I think would be how people will take you seriously, really just being professional. And if you're professional, people will be professional back to you. All right, Sasha, the question I'm still confused about is, how do I figure out the best possible fabric to use, which will help me also narrow down specifically what type of sustainable brand I'd like to create. The ones I'm considering are organic cotton, ZQ merino, and bamboo viscose, as they all provide soft, comfortable wear for the pieces I want to create. What advice do you have about this R&D process? As I realize when reaching out to potential manufacturing partners, I need to be very clear on what I'm looking for. I would actually do this the other way around personally. I wouldn't choose fabrics and then build my branding around it. I'd build my branding and then I would choose the fabrics that work for my branding. There's tons of different fabrics out there and they all have pros and they all have cons. This is another question I hate, like, what's the most sustainable fabric? There is none. It depends on what you're making. So decide what your values are, and then also decide what it is that you're making. If you're making swimsuits, organic cotton is not an option for you. They're going to weigh a bazillion pounds when you get out of the water. So, you have to decide what it is you're making, what's important to you, and then you start filling in the materials after that. Just from looking at this, organic cotton and merino those are two wildly different fibers, and they're going to create very different products. And in every instance, I wouldn't necessarily use merino where I would use cotton. So I think you need to decide what it is that you want and then back your way into that from a material standpoint. Lolly, my main question is, how do I sell consistently after manufacturing as a small business and startup? Manufacturing is very important, but selling strategy and knowing what to do or how to do it smart is also very important. Not ending with manufactured stuff in storage. Do you teach that and give insights into your program? Yes, definitely. Start smaller than what you think. A lot of times people get caught up in, if I make 100 pieces when they're doing the budgeting, if I make 100 pieces, I can get a lower price, and then I can, I'll make this much money. If I make 500 pieces, I'll get a lower price and then I'll make this much money. Like, make 20 pieces, make 50 pieces, at the very most make 100 pieces. But honestly, that's a lot for a first collection. See how it goes, and then you can always make more. I remember I met a girl years ago and she was like, I'm making 500 pieces of these caftans, and she made 3 styles. And I was like, are you sure you want to do that? She didn't work with me. She's just like a random acquaintance. She's like, oh yeah, like, it's 500 pieces. And her styles, like, they just weren't great. They didn't hit. They didn't sell. She tried to sell these things for like 3 years and then gave up. You don't want that to be, because she got a great price, right? She got into the factory she wanted to get into that her competitor worked at. But the thing is, her competitor didn't start at that factory. Her competitor started at a different factory with a lower MOQ, and they worked their way up to that factory. If you think that working at Lululemon's factory will make you successful, I promise you it will not. If you think that we're like working at Lululemon's factory will give you a quality product, I promise you it will not. If you do not know how to communicate your designs, if you don't know how to do quality assurance, if you don't know how to do the negotiations, it doesn't matter that you're at Lulu's factory. Their product will be the standard and yours will be a lower standard. It's not the factory's job to create a good product for you. It's your job to tell them how to do it, and then they execute. Sorry, that was another tangent, but basically you need to start small and not worry so much about where it is that you're making, but really focus on making smaller amounts, seeing what works. Okay, so you design a bad shirt, it's only 20 pieces, right? It's not 2,000 pieces. The rest of the styles that you created that hopefully sell well will cover that loss. And then you'll never make a shirt like that again, and you'll make the styles that did well. That's the strategy here. Okay. Ashley, web traffic. What is the best approach? How do you drive people to your site? So I am not going to get into that again. It's like 10 weeks of lessons, but I am going to tell you all this. You cannot rely in today's day and age on one strategy. If you think I'll just run Facebook ads, no. If you think, oh, I'll just do influencer collaborations, no. I'll do pop-ups, wholesale, whatever. You have to be doing a little bit of everything. You have to be on social media. You have to be working with influencers. You have to be in store. Here's another tangent. A lot of times people think that the profit that they will make on their e-commerce site is higher than wholesale. When you sell wholesale, if you sell a shirt for $100 on your website, that means you're selling it to that boutique for $50, really 45, but let's use 50 because it's a nice number. Which means if you made that shirt for $30, you're only making $20. Now, if you sell that on your website, yes, you're making $100 minus the 20 for the shirt. How much do you say the shirt costs? $30. So you're making 70 instead of 20. Those numbers look a lot better, right? It would make sense to work in e-commerce. But when you break down the marketing, the ads, the collaborations, the press, because not all press is free, all of these things that bring people to your website, you're actually not making money. Some e-commerce sites break even on their first customer acquisition, and then they hope that on the second order that that customer makes, they'll become profitable. Some websites, cosmetics specifically, lose money on their first customer acquisition. So basically, if they make $100 on that customer, it costs $150 to get them to purchase. But they hope that they'll be a lifelong customer, and over time, maybe that customer will make them $1,000. That is a very dangerous strategy. Wholesale is a bit safer. So wholesale has its issues, don't get me wrong, but it is going to, you have to look at wholesale as not, oh, I'm only making $20 instead of 70. You have to look at wholesale as free marketing, free advertising. Your product, it gets credibility because it's sitting next to product in that store that people already know and love. So I would say, again, I can't tell you step by step how to do all these things, but you need to be doing everything, and it will all kind of work together in unison. I hate this. A lot of people online that like teach programs, they're like, let me teach you how to pull the sales levers. Like that's not how it works. Like you have to be doing everything. There is no pulling this and switching that and turning that. Like it's constantly doing all the things and allowing them to all kind of work together in unison. That's what it really is. Okay. That. Is it unreasonable to ask for MOQ of 100, but not of one size? I'd like to do 20 small, 20 medium, etc. to add up to 100. Yeah, that's fine. There are factories that will do that. You're not going to have a problem finding that. I'm not an expert on fabrics, but I know how I want the fabric to feel. I'm thinking of finding the fabric and sending that sample to the manufacturer so they know exactly what I want. Is that possible? I think that's a great strategy. I think sometimes where people get caught up is they think that they know what the fabric is and they don't, and then they tell the factory they need something. I see this all the time. So my students have they fill out a form and then I give them the suppliers that I think would be the best match so they can just reach out and like get things going really quickly. And a lot of times they'll send me images of what they want to create, and they'll be like, someone's making like a pair of leggings and they're like, I need woven non-stretch. And I'm like, absolutely not. That's not what you need. So a lot of times people think they need one type of fabric because at the end of the day, I don't think any of you know anything much about textiles. Most people in the general population don't. That's normal. It's not something that you would learn anywhere in life except if you went to school for it, which I did. But the typical average person doesn't know. So by cutting a piece and sending it to your factory, you're going to reduce any chance of you getting it wrong or them misunderstanding you or anything like that. I think it's a great strategy to use. Also thinking of finding similar fashion styles I want and adjusting it by roughly hand sewing so they can see what I want. That works too. I'm a big fan of showing Especially when you're working overseas, if you can show someone something, it's easier for them to get it right than having to read it, especially when you're working with language barriers. And the reality is a lot of the people in factories that are making your stuff, they're literate, but barely. Like I try to keep everything at like a third grade communication level, just because Google Translate, it's hard to use. It's not perfect. So you want to make sure that everything is like super simple with your communications. And if you have a picture or you have a video or you have a sample, Google Translate won't mess that up for you. That's universal. Everyone understands that. I just posted on social media about, we have a woman that helps us here. She like cleans and cooks and does a lot of stuff for us. And she doesn't speak a lot of English. So when she needs things, she literally just takes a picture and she's like, go and get this. You can use that type of communication. I've spent a lot of time in factories where no one speaks English. But you can use, pictures are universal. Use that for sure. So I like that strategy. I remember once they had me go to this office. They didn't have a translator. I sat on my computer and I would type and I'd send the email and they would translate the email and then they would respond to me. And that's how the whole meeting went for hours, back and forth, back. I was like, why am I here? Like, why did I come all this way? For us to email back and forth, but that's what we did because I don't speak Mandarin and they didn't speak English and we had to get stuff done. But so Google Translate does work, but it can be rough and it doesn't always work 100% of the time. So I love it. Send samples. None of this matters much because I don't know where to find suppliers. Alibaba is not all that great. I noticed a lot of clothes made in Vietnam and India, but they don't have their own Alibaba site, or do they? Yeah, I would not recommend Alibaba. I have people that use Alibaba. I use Alibaba, but I know how to vet people, and that's something that I do teach in the Launch My Conscious Line program. I don't even, yeah, there's not enough time to even get it. I'm not going to even get into it because me trying to like breeze through this will create more problems for you than they'll solve. But there is a way of asking people specific questions to figure out if they would be a good supplier and then potentially moving forward with them. The best advice I can give for using Alibaba is like trade assurance and a verified supplier. Have those two boxes checked. Trade assurance means that if your order comes out bad, something's wrong, Alibaba will help you get a refund. And the verified suppliers just mean they've been around for a long time and they have a good reputation. So I would start there and really like things will still go wrong with those people, but it's going to protect you in some way. And that's like the quickest kind of tips I can give for this amount of time. So India has India Mart, INDI, India, it might be IndyMart. I don't go on it. The only time I ever do India Mart is when I have someone from my factory reach out on my behalf and do the negotiations. It's kind of the Wild West. I wouldn't recommend doing it on your own. The reason I know people aren't going to mess with like my factory doing it is because like my partner is like quite well known in the industry and I don't think anyone's going to try to like cross him, but as like a random person on the internet, yeah, you might get scammed. So Alibaba, I think, is a little bit safer. I haven't been on India Mart in years, so I could be wrong. At this point, India Mart could have like trade assurance and things like that. But if they do, use the suppliers that have that on it. Okay. Next we have, my name is Coral and I'm from Spain. I started a sustainable clothing brand in 2022. I currently work with European suppliers for t-shirt and hoodies, which are produced in Bangladesh. Additionally, I collaborate with Spanish workshops to screen print my designs and also to produce other items such as shirts. At the moment, I'm ordering the minimum quantity my supplier allows, which ranges from 10 to 20 units. Ideally, I would like to produce my products in Europe, typically allocate between $500 to $800 for new products. My question is, since I currently purchase sustainable t-shirts and sweatshirts from Bangladesh through my supplier and screen print the designs in Spain, it results in a high final cost of €11 per shirt. That is not a high final cost. Given the average selling price in my market, I should, especially for 20 pieces. If you were telling me you were doing 2 million, I would say, yeah, that's insanely high. But for 10 pieces, 11 euro is for a completely finished product, a fine price. I should be able to get my t-shirts for 7 euro. Would it make sense to stop working with my supplier, start manufacturing t-shirts and sweatshirts in a factory in India? No, because if you got a t-shirt made in India for 7 euro, you're going to have to ship it, and you're gonna have to pay duties, and you're gonna have to pay customs, and you're going to have a bond, which costs $500 a year minimum, and you're going to have a lot of other fees when you start importing these things yourself. So I don't recommend that. I don't think your pricing is that bad. And if you want lower pricing, I think you need to up your MOQ from 20 units to like 200. Uh, no one in India that is a decent supplier is going to take a t-shirt order of 20 units. T-shirts, swim, leggings, knit products in general, they're going to have a higher MOQ than woven products. That's because knit products are a lot quicker to sew than woven products. So they don't want to take a 20-piece MOQ because by the time they set up the machines and they set up the sewing line, your order is literally done in like 5 minutes, and then they've got to go through the hassle of configuring their factory for the next order. Whereas wovens, you can get those lower MOQs. Now, wovens are going to have a higher price point than a knit, but it kind of all balances out. You have a higher MOQ and lower price for the knits, and a lower MOQ but a higher price for the wovens. So I think based on this information you told me, I think that you're getting a pretty good deal right now, and you're gonna have to increase your MOQ to get better. Okay. Alexa, my question, is it better to buy yarn than go to fabric mills, or buy already made fabric from a supplier about time and price? Okay, so it is true that in the supply chain, you have fiber suppliers, like people who make cotton and people who shear sheep for wool, and people who produce rayon and polyester and all those type of people. And those fibers go to spinners, yarn spinners, and they spin them into yarns. And then from the yarns, they go to weavers or knitters. And then from there, they go to a dye house or print house where it gets color added, and sometimes some finishing like brushing or sueding or mercerization or water repellency or whatever. And then it goes to the factory to be cut and sewn. You as a small brand should be starting your supply chain at the fabric level. So you should be talking to fabric suppliers, not yarn suppliers, unless you're ordering like, I don't know, probably like 10,000 meters of fabric. Yarn people probably aren't going to talk to you. So in your research or trying to find suppliers, start at the fabric level, not the yarn level. Okay, Bridget, I'm curious about two things. When it comes to picking up how many grams per meter squared your fabric has, do you have anything based on experience you use, or do you wear test? I plan on doing wear testing, daily gym, bike, etc. The second question is about packaging. So I would look at what your competitors are doing. Grams per square meter is how we weigh fabrics. So higher GSM is going to be heavier, a lower GSM is going to be thinner and lighter. For your GSM, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the fiber. So like if you're doing a cotton shirt and it's like 180 GSM, if you make it in rayon, you might actually want to like bulk it up and make it like 200 GSM. It depends. So the GSM is important, but it's not as important. Like if I was going to tell a supplier I want to source this t-shirt material, I would say like I want a medium weight t-shirt. I want it to have a little bit of stretch. That's what I would say. I wouldn't be like I want 150 GSM, especially if you don't know what 150 GSM is and how it will like reflect your designs. I would send fabrics that you like again maybe to them, but I wouldn't get so much into the GSM of it all. like in swim and like leggings, it comes up a lot because you don't want it to be see-through, but like getting a 210 GSM will not guarantee it's not see-through, because if you have a really loose knit, it's going to be see-through compared to a compact one with like finer yarns. So it's not like hard and rules. It's good to be aware about it, but if you don't know a lot about fabrics, I wouldn't focus on it when sourcing. Second question is about packaging. Is there anything you wish more people knew? Do you prefer packaging in the factory or separately? Make shipping and maybe storing easier? Well, prepackaged helps with external shipping partners. My plan is to start packaging myself, maybe just in smooth paper. Okay, so everything should be shipped in a poly bag. They make recyclable and compostable poly bags. The reason you want to ship in a poly bag is because you're going to have the least amount of damage as possible. Patagonia did a really good study years ago where they tried all these different methods of shipping their stuff to reduce plastic waste. And what they basically found is that there were so many damages shipping without the poly bags. They were creating more waste by trying to eliminate the plastic. So you want each of your garments to be in a poly bag. Again, they make compostable ones, they make recyclable ones. There are greener options, but always have one in a bag. I would not, like, if we're talking about like boxes and mailers and things like that, I would not have your factory put the boxes and mailers into, or your product into boxes and mailers, because what if someone orders 2 of one size? What if someone orders 3 different things, right? You need to be able to pick and pack. That's what it's called. What they ordered and pack it, right? You pick it out, you pack it. I think it's great that you are doing your own shipping. A lot of times people will get a 3PL. A 3PL is the people who will eventually ship out your stuff, just so you know that term. And it's too soon. They're expensive. They're going to, sorry, eat into your bottom line. I've got a bit of a cold. They're going to eat into your bottom line, and you can do it yourself. If you don't have time to do it yourself or you're traveling, I think that packing and shipping is a great first job for like high school students. You maybe hire one of them for minimum wage. This is not, we just had this conversation in office hours. A lot of times when people are starting sustainable brands, they think everyone needs to be making $40 an hour. That is not the case. There are things called entry-level jobs, and you make minimum wage, and your goal is not, and these are again like high school students, right? You're not hiring someone for this job who's 40 years old. You're hiring someone who's like 15 as an after-school job. They have parents who are helping provide for them and all that. They're going to help you do this, and then they'll hopefully maybe grow within your business, and maybe they'll start helping you with social media, right? A lot of times kids are really good at that. And you can start giving them more roles, and as they grow, they make more money. It's important to remember that, because if you look historically at a lot of these brands that were like, we pay everyone all this money, most of them are out of business right now. So you have to remember, there's a difference between exploiting people, and there's a difference between just paying for a job and then helping people grow into higher jobs, right? That's the goal in our factory in India. We, try to promote from within. We try to move people up. Our head merchandiser right now, she's been there for many, many years, and she didn't start as a head merchandiser. She started at a very low position, and she proved herself, and she worked and she worked. And that's what you want to do to be an ethical company. It's not about just like, we pay everyone this much money. That sounds great, but when it comes to the numbers on the page, you might not be in business in a year. You really want to focus on helping people grow to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. That's what you want to focus on. So for shipping, after school job for like, a neighbor's kid or something like that, I think that's a perfect job that you should be able to budget into your company without really like putting yourself at risk. And that's something that we do in Launch My Conscious line, just kind of financial planning and figuring out, who do you hire first? How, is it a full-time hire? Is it a part-time hire? How much can you afford to pay people? All this type of stuff. And there is no right or wrong answer. I thought it was really interesting. never mind. I'm gonna keep going. But that is because we're gonna start running out of time. I think we've got quite a few more questions. All right. Packaging. Okay, Hannah, are there domestic or Mexican or Canadian manufacturers that offer low MOQ and fast turnaround for cut and sew garments? I'm not sure what you would think a fast turnaround is, but if you're going low MOQ fast turnaround, I would just hire a seamstress and have them make your pieces one at a time or two at a time or 10 at a time. A home sewer can easily make 10 pieces for you or more. So I would go with that. With a factory, you have to be like in their system, and at the end of the day, like I said, like if you have a MOQ of 100 t-shirts, like we complete in a day. Why are you waiting 3 months for those 100 t-shirts? Because you're waiting for your fabric. You're waiting for your fabric to get checked. You're waiting for your fabric to go, then get dyed, come back, get checked again. Then you're waiting in line because there's 5 other people ahead of you on the cutting table before you get your stuff cut. That's where the time comes into place in these systems. So if you have someone who's just working for you, or you and a couple of other projects, like a home sewer who isn't a giant, basically these factories, they're machines, you can usually get things done a little bit faster. The other thing you can do is you can store your fabric. If you're able to, if you know you're going to use, I'm making black t-shirts all day long, if you only need 100 meters of fabric, buy 1,000, save it. This way, when you're ready for your next order, you've got the fabric there and you could start cutting it immediately. You're not waiting a month and a half for that fabric to be knit, dyed, all this, all the steps I just explained. So that's another way of making it go faster. We are ideally looking for a partner that can streamline the full clothing development process from patterns and grading to fabric sourcing to full production. So that is called full package production. There are different ways that you can do your production. You can source all of your own components and bring them to a factory, and the factory will put them all together. Or you could do something called full package, where you basically just send your information to a factory. You say, I want this, and from sourcing the fabric to the labels and tags, they do everything for you and they give you one price. This is all going to cost you $13 or however many dollars. Whereas the other way, you're figuring out how much the fabric costs and all that. I do not recommend, if you're going to work with me, you can do sourcing everything yourself. Do not try to do this on your own, because there are systems in factories and checkpoints and even just ordering, okay, this shirt takes 1 meter of fabric to make. I want to make 5 of these shirts. I need 5 meters of fabric. Wrong. There's waste. There's, cutting issues. You should probably order 8. Or more, depending on the fabric. If you're ordering digitally printed silk, you're going to have to order a lot more because that tends to get damaged a lot. So I would not recommend people with no experience trying to kind of cobble everything together themselves. Go full package if you're trying to go it alone. All right. Nancy, is it common to request some kind of fabric book, swatch library, or resource book from the factories you work with? For example, if I say I need a mid-weight compact stretch poly spandex blend, could I get a book of options? Mid-weight, I'm not crazy about that term. It's subjective. The same way low MOQ is subjective. When I worked in fast fashion, our MOQs were 100,000 pieces at factories. That was tiny for us because we were sometimes making 1 million pieces, right? A low MOQ for Walmart is like 100,000 pieces, but that's like crazy for any of us. That's a huge order. So it's all, when you say low MOQ, like what does that mean? Does that mean 1 piece? Does that mean 100? Does that mean 1,000? What does midweight mean? I'm not really sure. Like, are you making a flowy blouse that you just don't want to be see-through, or like, I'm not sure. So you should really kind of give more information when you reach out to the supplier. Say, I'm making this and these are my goals with this fabric. I don't want it to be see-through. I do want it to be see-through. Whatever it is, let them know what you're making and how you want it to look. And yes, you can ask for this. It's called a swatch book, hangers, or headers. Those are the 3 things that they call them. A header is basically a piece of paper with the swatch stapled on. A hanger is literally a swatch on a hanger. And then a swatch book is all the swatches stapled into a book. So you generally need to pay for these things. They'll usually give you the swatches for free, but but you'll have to pay for the shipping. So be careful with that, especially if it's coming overseas, because that adds up really fast and eats into your budget. So make sure you're communicating clearly what you want. This way, if you spend the money shipping this stuff, you're getting what it is that you need. Now I'm thinking of creating a line, Casey. Now I'm thinking of creating a line and the tech package and giving it to an overseas company and doing an MOQ of raw bases that can be dyed to what the final design is needed. So that's garment dyeing, and then adding the finished work here on site. Very rarely do I have a silhouette that betrays the ballet figure. I would like to start with offering lycra-based tutus. Lycra is Lycra's stretch fabric. Lycra is 100% stretch. You don't make something 100% Lycra. Lycra, like the most Lycra I've ever seen is like 20%. So you, maybe like nylon would be something that a tutu would be made out of. Like you could have also like a stretch fiber in that. Mesh fabric in general is going to have some stretch if you have a knit mesh. So there's like molded mesh, which is essentially plastic with holes in it. And then there's knit mesh, and the knit mesh can have a lot of stretch. I used to work with some meshes, like they really stretch. So power mesh is another one that stretches a lot without the power mesh has lycra in it. By the way, lycra, spandex, elastane. Elastane is just the generic way of saying lycra, so it will cost you less, and it's just not name brand. But you're gonna depending on what these things are made out of, it's very hard to dye polyester and nylon. Petroleum-based fabrics are extremely difficult to dye, and you can't really dye them at home. So if they're like rayon, you can. So it's going to depend on what they're made out of if you can do the dyeing. Okay, Julia, I don't know where to start. Probably, sorry, it's more water. Probably I need to learn some fashion drawing program. Would that be the best to start? And then how do I find a so you don't need to know how to draw. You don't need to know how to sew to do all this. Quite frankly, it's good to know a little bit. It never hurts to have some knowledge about what it is that you're doing, but the time that you and money you will invest in learning to be a designer, you don't need to do that to get started. And then how do you find a factory to collaborate in general? What is the first steps I need to take? I'm trying to get information, but then it gets chaotic and overwhelming. So could someone point in the step of what to do to start to make it happen? It would be super helpful. Thank you in advance. So I would say the first thing you need to do is really figure out your styles and what it is that you want to make and what it is that you need. And then you can start figuring out what supplier is the right supplier. Again, I'm not getting into where to find suppliers in this call. Do you do a course, Dagmar? Do you have to do a course from you before your consultation? How much is your consultation? So the Launch My Conscious Line program is $3,500. It's 6 months. You get phone calls every single week. You also get special calls with different speakers. I have like fashion lawyers come and all different accountants and different types of people, PR specialists and lots of cool people come and talk. So that's included as well. And then there's a 24/7 WhatsApp group where you can text me questions all the time. I usually, if I'm not sleeping, I usually reply within like an hour, sometimes quicker. The consultancy where I do everything for you starts at $14,000, and that includes me developing and sourcing 5 styles for you. Unless you have a ton of money and like a million things going on, like I really don't want to consult for people. I think you can learn to do it yourself and you can save a lot of money. And it's good to learn to do it yourself, because then if you want to go other places or move around, like you have the wherewithal to be the leader of your brand. If you have me do everything for you, and some people do, I have a lot of private consultancy people and they're just too busy to learn it themselves. But they never really fully know everything that's going on. And if it's not me, they'll have to hire someone else like me to get things done. And I think that's a risky way to have your business. When I learned how to horseback ride, my parents a lot of the people that I grew up with, they would show up to the stable and their horse would be ready to ride. I had to do everything. We had to clean the stalls, and there was a job on that farm, like I can do it. And I think when you learn, I'm not an expert in it, but I can do it and I can understand it. And I think when you can do and you can understand a little bit about everything, right? You don't have to take a design program and become a designer. Know a little bit about it, just so you can communicate your designs. You become better at what it is that you do, and you're able to hire better. The biggest mistake that brands make is they think they can hire out everything they don't know. And you will waste a ton of money if that is your strategy. When you hire someone to amplify what you're already doing well. You don't hire someone to fix it. And if your strategy is like, I'll hire a PR person, I'll hire a Facebook ads person, I'll hire, you're not going to succeed. You're just not, because no one cares about your brand as much as you do, and no one understands your brand as well as you do. So when you hire someone, you want to say, like, I'm running these ads are doing well, how can you help me take them to the next level, right? Like everything you do, you want to be understanding on some level yourself. There's some stuff you won't, like tech stuff and website stuff like that. For me, it's like blind trust with the people that I hire. I don't understand it. It will take me a lifetime to understand it. I'm not, but the stuff in terms of like making a clothing line, the basics of sourcing, the basics of manufacturing, the basics of communicating with your factory, your designs, the basics of your sales, right? People are like, I'll just get a showroom and they'll do my sales. Like, no, you won't, because the first thing a showroom will ask you is, what stores are you already in? And if you're not already in stores, they don't want to take you on as a client, because they're like, why aren't they in stores? Like, they should be in some stores. Like, the showroom is meant to amplify what you're already doing. So keep that in mind with the consultation thing. That's the only reason I read that question, because I think it applies to everything you're going to do in your business. Take the time to learn a little bit about it. This way, you know what it is you're hiring someone to do. Okay. Philip, but times are hard without anything to start financially. So Philip basically doesn't have funds to start their brand. What's the best plan of action I could take given my current situation? Every quarter, I go through all of my finances. I look at where I'm spending my money. I look at what applications I have on my phone. I look at, do I really need Netflix and Hulu? And I make decisions on, like in India, I only use Hulu. I never use Netflix. Like, I don't need Netflix right now. I can get rid of it for a few months. Look at everything that you're spending your money on and start to make cuts, and in your personal life and in your business life. And that's how you can start saving money for your brand. And I know there's like a meme out there that's like, what is it? Like, boomers say that if we just stop eating avocado toast, we could buy a house. Yes and no, because like I personally just audited my entire personal and business, and I'm now saving like $3,000 to $4,000 a month. That's a lot of money spread out over 12 years, right? What's 3,000 times 12? That's 12, 24, what? $36,000 I'm saving just because I went through and I was like, I don't need this. I've been hiring a freelancer. When I looked at it, they weren't basically contributing to my bottom line, and I was wasting money on them. So I'm no longer working with them anymore. There were lots of little things too, that this app, that app, this, whatever it was, and I got rid of it and I saved a lot of money that I now plan to reinvest into other things. So if you don't have money to start your brand, just figure out how you can save every little thing, every little extra thing. Like, you have to, on some level, sacrifice a little. And that's what I would do. I would spend the next year saving, and really like looking. It's amazing when you look at your finances sometimes some people are really on top of their finances, but I find like 90% of people are not. I always say starting a brand is like going into Target. You spend a little, spend a little, oh, it's just $5 for this Fiverr person. It's just $10 for this sample. It's just, and by the end of it, you're $30,000 in debt. So look at what it is that you're spending, whether you're trying to save money for your brand or whether you're just trying to stay on budget and really proactively, do that. And I think that's just solid advice. A lot of people run out of money on their brand before they even get started. Make a budget, follow your budget. You don't need a huge budget. There are ways to get started. Again, blanks, print on demand. Those are two great ways to kind of get started testing things and building a brand without really investing anything. So I would look into those. Okay. Priscilla, what would you consider next steps? Apply for grants, get funding, draw the collection, look for manufacturers. Yeah, you need you need to figure out what it is that you're making. You need to figure out who your target customer is. You have to figure out, do they really want what it is that you think that they want? And you need to create a budget. That's the most important thing. You need to say, and when you create your budget, don't create a budget of like, I hope to have this much money. I only have $2,000, but like by the time I launch, maybe I'll have 10. No, if you have $2,000 in the bank, $2,000 is your budget and you figure out a way to make it work, and you can, but you don't create a budget based on fantasies in the future. You create a budget based on what you have right now. And that's how you succeed. So the first thing you need to do is you need to make a budget. You need to make a business plan. You need to, and you can't even apply for grants and funding without a budget and a business plan. And you need to, you need to know what your collection is. Again, that's part of your business plan. How can you ask for money if you can't show anyone what it is that you want to do? So get those business basics in order, and then you can kind of start moving into the next things. Shirali, how do I know if I'm getting the right price for the samples and MOQ? In Launch My Conscious Line, I just tell my students like, this, you're getting ripped off, or this is a good price. In your case, you shop around, get 3, 4, 5 quotes from different suppliers and see if they all align, or if one's a lot more expensive or a lot lower. Avoid the people on the extremes. Try to work with the people that are kind of in the middle. How do I find the right manufacturer for the right design and fabrics? I'm gonna skip that one. Manufacturers don't answer. How do I get in touch? It's probably your email, I would say. 9 out of 10 times it's the email that people are sending. I have templates on the website. If you just look at like fabric sourcing, if you put that in the website, you should see the templates. And I'm going to send some templates too at the end of this. So keep an eye on your emails, but I would be careful. In the program, I tell my students to call, but they know how to ask for what they want. So I would avoid calling until you are 100% sure that you are professional sounding, and then you could try calling. Elena, I'm also curious about your thoughts on the pre-order made-to-order business model for young brands. This worked in 2017. Pre-orders don't really work now. Recession-ish we're in right now. People are holding on to their money more. Also, Kickstarter kind of has a bad name. A lot of people invested into a lot of things and like the brands never actually made them. So this whole notion of like, you don't need any money to start, just pre-sell. It's not 2017 anymore. It's 2024. And there are other strategies that you can use. Again, print on demand and blanks. You're not going to be able to design all these extravagant pieces, but you will be able to start testing, building an audience, and moving towards that goal, doing it that way if you don't have a budget. Pre-sale I use as more of like a marketing strategy. Like maybe we'll get a few more orders with the pre-sale. And the people that are doing really well on Kickstarter, the reality is they are hiring agencies that specialize in Kickstarter. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and they take a percentage of everything that you earn. Jalop is one of them, JELLOP, I believe. They are not someone that I would get involved with, because the person that I knew that used them, like they made a ton of money, but it didn't work out. So I would be careful before you start paying people tons of money to get you a Kickstarter. They did well, like they raised a ton of money, but I think at the end of the day, the numbers just weren't right. So be careful with that. Megan, what type of brand do you want to start? I have an idea for a specific legging pant for pickleball and tennis. We're in the process of starting a brand, very beginning. And the question is, I want to know if my idea is worth pursuing or if it's too niche. I think it's great. I think the more niche, the better. I think a lot of times new brands are like, oh, but what if someone wants this? And what if someone wants that? And I don't want to lose any potential customers. And it's too wide and it's too much. The brands are very general. They never do well. They usually you're not talking to anyone, you're not relating to anyone. Your strategy in marketing cannot be, I'm the next Gap, I'm the next Target, I'm the next everything for everyone. It has to be speaking to someone specific. So, even in pickleball, you can niche down. You have the super competitive pickleball players who are traveling all over the country. You have the pickleball players that are like now on like sports teams. They have like pickleball, like NBA or whatever it is. And you have casual pickleball players. You also have, it's very common. My parents live in Naples half the year, and it's common with like a lot of retirees, right? That's one tier of people. And it's also now popular with college students. So even within this niche that you think is already too small, I think you could niche down even more. Who's your person in this community? So keep niching down. I've never had anyone give me a niche that was so small. I was like, no, this won't work. Keep niching down. There's always more to niche down. And when you niche down, right? If you're making pickleball stuff and you're talking to my dad who's 75, you're going to be communicating and using very different language and imagery than someone who's my age. So that's why you want to niche down, because you're going to use different words, different tone, different fonts, different colors, different everything. So make sure to really niche into who that person is. Okay, Bonnie, my question is, how do you create a clothing brand successfully if your manufacturing is done in a foreign country? I mean, all of my clients in my factory make in a foreign country. Can you ship between Bali and New Zealand, or is it too high of a cost? And are you better off flying? So that's going to depend. Flying to Bali during the sampling process, just using Bali as an example. Okay, a couple things going on here. Shipping, you're going to want to hire someone called a freight forwarder who's going to help you with your shipping. That's the term that you want. It's called a freight forwarder. Shipping, if you are making over 100 pieces, I would say going overseas is worth it. You're probably going to save money in the long run. If you're making 20 pieces, by the time you ship your samples back and forth, tweaks and this and that, and then your production over, like you're not going to save any more money than just spending a little bit more in whatever country you're in and doing it and not having all the shipping fees. So, that's the first part of this question. The second part of this question is going to visit. A lot of people choose where they want to manufacture based on where they want to be. A lot of people that manufacture in Bali, like they want to go on vacation in Bali. I have my factory in India because we live here. We're here half the year. It makes sense. I still work in China a lot, but in a different capacity. So yeah, I mean, it depends on, the lifestyle that you want. If you want to go and you want to go to Bali for a month and work on your samples and do your production and load up a suitcase and bring it home, do it. A lot of brands do that. A lot of people do that in Jaipur. They come to Jaipur, they spend 3 months. It's part of the life that they want to be leading, but you do not have to go to your factory. This can all be done remotely. It's if you want to, and most people do want to, and you can work a lot quicker and more efficiently if you do travel and go. So really the cost effectiveness of it all is going to be where your MOQ is. I would cost it out overseas and I would cost it out domestically, but just remember, to make it domestically, it might come out to like $10,000, and to make it overseas, it might come out to 5. But when you factor in all that shipping and all that travel and all that everything, it's probably going to be about the same price. Okay, next up, Nisha. I know my aesthetic, but I can't draw or sew to save my life. I've tried reaching out to people that I admire from time to time, but they're usually only interested in doing their own thing. Also, how much do you charge for your services? Okay, we went over that. I've tried reaching out to people. So you don't need to know how to draw or sew. Most of the people, like I said, on, I've got 50 brands, successful brands on the website. Most of them don't know how to draw or sew. You don't want a business partner. People who are starting brands in general always want a business partner because it's scary and you want someone to do it with, and that's normal. But at the end of the day, that business partner is probably going to hold you back. They're going to want different things out of the business than you. They're going to want to make different decisions than you. They're probably not going to pull their weight. Another meme, what is it? Like, when I die, I want the people who I worked on group projects with to lower me down into my grave so they can let me down one last time, right? Like, there's always someone who ends up doing all the work. It's probably going to be everyone here because you're all taking the time to sit here in the morning and learn. So I do not recommend having a business partner. Do it yourself and own your brand and do it right. And it's going to be a lot scarier, but in the long run, it's going to be better for your business. There's some statistic that like partnership brands don't do as well. They go out of business, I think, faster than people who start their own brand on their own. Okay, next. Oh my God, we have so many more questions. All right, let's keep moving. Daphne, 4 designs for girls and 4 designs for women. Total piece is 400. I would like to spend between $3,000 and $5,000. The collection above, depending on the quality. So that's not realistic. Do some math before you decide what it is that you want to make. If you only have $4,000 and you want to make $3,000, you want to make 400 pieces, that's under $10 a piece. That's not realistic. Plus you have all of your development costs, patterns, markers, samples, all that type of stuff. Like, this is not a realistic budget. So before you reach out to anyone, like, do a little basic math. I always say, $20 probably, depending on the garment, but you're probably not going to get that price plus, shipping and everything else. Zara, I'm currently in Jaipur, India. What is the best way to know I'm paying the best price for fabric services in India? Again, I would just shop around, see a couple of different suppliers and see what prices they all offer. What is the standard price for low MLQ organic cotton knit? Okay, yeah. So the reason I left this question in is because, again, low MLQ is relative. Is it 10 pieces, 100 pieces? Money is relative, right? If you have $1 million, $100 is nothing. If you have $1,000 in your bank account, $100 is a lot of money. Everything in life is relative. So always use like exact numbers when speaking with people. I need this, I need that, I need whatever it is. Don't talk in these vague ways because you're not really saying anything or communicating any sort of information. So keep that in mind. That's really one of the biggest mistakes I see people making. They're very vague. The other mistake I see people make is like they pretend like they're these big brands. We have Google. We can see that you haven't launched yet. Don't lie to suppliers and pretend like you're bigger than you are, because they're just not going to respond to you. Be honest. I'm starting out. This is where I'm at, and you'll get a lot more replies than if you pretend like you're this like huge corporation. Because we know that it's not true, and it just, you start off on a bad foot, right? You start off on dishonesty, and it's not a good place to start a manufacturing relationship from. Okay. Jill Mill, my production for garments is currently being done at a tailoring unit owned by someone else. At what point in my business should I consider setting up my own tailoring unit? And an extension to this question, at what point should I consider contract manufacturing? I don't think you should at all. Managing a factory is a full-time job. Factories don't even do everything in an entire supply chain, right? They buy fabric from other people, they buy trim from other people, they're just cut and sew. Some brands have their own little, studios and workrooms, but you're doing 2 jobs then. You are managing a factory and then you are managing a brand. And I don't know why anyone would want to do that. Sometimes factories will create their own brand, but that's because they are making things all day long and they simply have to hire a designer to design some stuff for them, and they can make a brand, and then obviously marketing and all that stuff. But to go the other way, it doesn't necessarily make sense, and I wouldn't recommend it for anyone because the factory that you're working with, they do have some expertise, even though you are responsible, like I said in the beginning, for making sure your product comes out well. They know a lot more about, the flow, how to get things done, the ordering, right? The shrinkage, the ordering of the fabric, all these things they are going to kind of take care of for you. So I wouldn't recommend that. Give me 1 second, everyone. I'm going to come back. Give me I just need 2 minutes because this is going longer and I just have to check on something. Okay, let's keep going. We're nearing the end. Okay. Harshita, how does the transport process work? How expensive is it? Who organizes it? So this can happen in a lot of different ways, and there are a lot of different options. You can have it so that your factory organizes everything for you, and they even prepay the duties and all the fees. You can have it so your factory, it's picked up from the factory, but you are organizing it. You can have it so your factory ships it to the port, and then from the port, you do it. Most times you need to ship to a port. So like in Jaipur, our nearest port is Delhi. So everything has to go through Delhi. That's where it clears customs and then gets exported. So you can do it like that. I always recommend that you have your shipping people in your home country or where it's being exported to. If you're manufacturing in India and you have an Indian shipping agent and you get caught in American customs, they are not going to be able to help you and it is going to be a headache. So always have a shipping agent who can, that's what they do. That's what you're paying them for. They're paying them to make sure all your paperwork is done correctly and it gets out. I have a very good shipping agent. They're able to clear my customs before it even lands. So I'm able to get my product out in 24 hours, which is crazy. Some people wait like 3 weeks to get their product out of the ports and stuff. So you want to, that's the best advice I could give, like really quickly. Make sure that whoever you're working with is has relationships wherever it's being shipped to. Okay. Alaya, I've sent out tech packs to 3 factories within the EU for my first swimwear capsule collection. Do you have any general advice for things I should look out for, ask about? I know I should get sample made from all 3 factories, but should I get a sample of the same bathing suit? You should not. That's super expensive. And unless you have a really big budget, I just wouldn't do that. I think you should sample with 1 factory, see how it goes. If it goes well, move into production. If it doesn't do well, then sample with the other factory as your backup. To do 3 rounds of sampling or 3 samples with 3 different suppliers it's super expensive. So I wouldn't do that. Manelli, yes, the way I understand it, I could use my own measurements to request a sample. However, since grading plus size clothes isn't just about adding more centimeters to the existing pattern, I would like to know how and where to find resources to learn about to do plus size grading. So the best place, I would go shopping and I would find who's doing a really good plus size pattern. This is important for anyone that's interested in doing like inclusive sizing. The reason I use quotes is because inclusive sizing really is not that inclusive usually at the end of the day. What brands do is they just make their patterns bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the human body, if you look at a person that wears plus size, they're not just like a bigger version of a size 2. They have different proportions. The proportions of the body are actually different. So if you want to make plus size, you need to actually plan to make two different, totally different patterns. You're essentially creating two different lines. So I'm glad you brought this up. It sounds like you do understand that you can't just make something bigger to make it plus. Same with petites. You can't just make it smaller. Petites have different ratios, arms are shorter. There's just different stuff going on. And you have to, so if you want to do petites, standard sizing and plus size, you're making 3 brands, you're making 3 patterns, you're making 3 samples, you're making 3 of everything. And that's why brands don't do it properly, because that is crazy expensive. It's easier to just blow it up bigger or shrink it down smaller. So if you're going to do plus size, like please do it correctly, or like don't bother doing it at all. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. There's so much garbage in this world. Like stop making bad petites and plus. Tangent over. Anyway, I think, you know, the best way to get started is to go out and figure out there are brands that are doing it well, and see who's doing it well and what you can do better, and go from there. Shop the market. Okay, we are done. That is all of the questions. That was a lot. I hope it was helpful for everyone. I'm gonna quickly just go through these comments and see. Yeah, this is whoever wrote, "Hi everyone, just randomly throwing this in here. Is there anyone who has any info on manufacturing tailoring factory who can make some samples in London, United Kingdom, please?" This is like the worst. Don't meet people on Facebook groups. Don't meet people in random places. That is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea. And if you watched, I'm assuming whoever asked this question did not watch the video that I gave everyone before, but if you watched it, you would know that the place to go is trade shows. So I'm going to tell you all one more time, because from the questions that a lot of people asked me, I could tell that you didn't watch the video. Which is annoying because I spent a lot of time on that video, and it's, you know, you missed an opportunity here where you could have asked questions and I could have helped you instead of asking things that were already covered. Trade shows. Trade shows are where you want to go to meet suppliers. I have a list of trade shows on my website. Trade shows are professional people. They are vetted. If they don't do a good job, they don't get to come back to the trade show. They want new customers. They are literally spending like $10,000 to go and meet people like you. A lot of times people think that trade shows are for like big companies, but most trade shows today have like sampling areas, and they have low MOQ areas, and they have lots of stuff for like startup friendly stuff. Go to the trade shows. Now trade show strategy is a whole thing in and of itself. We have a whole lesson about trade shows in Launch My Conscious Line. We also we do a lot of trade show prep, and we do like a lot of times we'll meet up at trade shows, especially in New York. I usually we meet and we all go together, which is fun. But that's your answer. Go to trade. Like, do not meet people on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, where this message here is like, it's like you're asking to be scammed. Don't do this, please. If you take anything away from this call, don't do that type of stuff. Just go to trade shows. And if you can't go to trade shows, they're all online. They all give a list of all the vendors that are there. Go through the vendor list and email the people on that list. And that's what's going to help you. Okay. Enough of that. So for until the end of this call, if you want to sign up for Launch My Conscious Line, and I'm going to throw this in to the chat, you can get $300 off. This is the last discount that I'm going to be running for it. So you can get $300 off if you use the code winter24. Once the call is over, the code is going to stop working. So you can sign up for that, and let's do the drawing really quickly. So if you want to be entered to win 50% off of the program, just you can do like a reaction. So just like raise your hand, I think, recognize hand gesture, do the raise your hand, and I will create a list. Okay. leave it raised. Don't move it. Is everyone's? No, okay. Hold on. Okay, cool. Someone give me, who doesn't have their hand raised, a number between 21 and 40. 34. Okay, here we go. What was the number? 34? Jordana is the winner. So Jordana, if you want to just send me in the chat your email so I can send you a special code. Cool, let me just copy that. All right, awesome. I hope everyone got something out of this. If you didn't watch the video, I suggest you go back and watch it. It should still be live. There's a lot of really good information in it, including information about trade shows and where to find ones to go to that can help you source. And yeah, hopefully I'll click the reactions emoji at the bottom bar. Okay, so hopefully I'll see a lot of you in the program. If not, good luck. Make sure to be following along on Instagram and on the emails because I've always got free stuff and information coming out. So even if you don't take the program, it's still a lot of interesting things that you can learn. And that's it. Yeah, so I will hopefully see a lot of you soon. Again, the code is winter24 if you want the $300 off. After that, the price is going back up to 3,500 and it's staying there until the next time I do the program. So make sure if you're thinking about taking it, you might as well get the discount and save some money. Okay. Thanks, Melanie. How many people will attend next Launchpad Consultation? Just know I'm already in. I cap it at 25. Thank you. Fantastic call. Thanks today. Thank you. This was very informative and I took a lot away from this meeting. Okay, great. I'm very happy to hear that. Be sending the bonuses that were in the video. Yeah, so you're gonna get an email at the end of this. All right. Bye, everyone.